Welcome, I'm starting all over. Drink with James, episode 126. Back in the office. I love vacations, I love time off, but after 2 or 3 days, I start itching a little bit, ready to get back into the office. As I get older, I just like my routine, and no matter how lovely it is to be outside of that routine, after a couple days, I start to want to be, back in my flow, back on the bike in the mornings, back eating healthy food, back in the office every day, feeling that busy, crazed feeling. So I'm happy to be back in the office. We have our holiday party this evening, which is partially why I'm drinking coffee, because it's 2 p.m. on a Monday right now, and Tim's going to try and turn this video around as quickly as he can, but I cannot start drinking at 2 p.m. and then go to our holiday party. If you have ever hung out with any of the 4 staff, I am just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to bad choices. So I'm sure tonight is going to be painful. Well, tomorrow will be painful. Tonight's going to be beautiful. So also on the way down and back up, I started this new book, Principles by Ray Dalio, who is a hedge fund manager, most successful hedge fund manager ever. He is worth $19 billion, which is a decent amount of money, would probably take care of at least my core needs. And he wrote this book, Principles. I'm only halfway through, so I can't give you a full rundown, but really interesting. I suggest all of you read it, even if you're not into finance. It's fascinating hearing how someone who came from very lower middle class background became that successful. He lives his life by, a number of guiding principles that have helped him, make all of his decisions. Something he said that I found really interesting was essentially he was saying, if you're an entrepreneur or an investor, the only way to make money is betting against the consensus. Something we've talked about a lot is that, the stuff that's worked for other people probably isn't going to be the way that you become successful. And essentially he says that, if you're buying a stock, let's say you're buying Amazon, everyone believes that Amazon is a very valuable company. So that belief is baked into the price. So people's optimism about Amazon is in the price, which means that in a lot of ways it is probably overvalued because the optimism is already baked into it. So the only way you can make money is by betting against what everybody else believes, which is very similar to being an entrepreneur. Ask any entrepreneur when they started their business. Most of the stories the first few years is everybody thought I was stupid, everyone said this wouldn't work, nobody thought this was a good idea. You bet against the consensus, and that is how you make money. And so we've talked about that a bit on the show, just I can give you advice, but the next person who's going to make it and is going to kill it on Instagram, the next big blogger, isn't going to follow any of that advice probably. They're going to find something totally different that they're doing. That's kind of the product market fit thing we talk about as well. But I think it's an important thing to think about in your own life, about betting against the consensus, about, doing things that nobody else is doing, and that nobody else even thinks is a good idea. What's also interesting in that is that if you spend your life betting against the consensus, you will be wrong sometimes. You will have painful losses. You will fail a lot. And another thing that kind of stuck with me is he said that, you should be building your life around and taking satisfaction in your ability to suffer and struggle well, and that the goal for you can't be success. If you say that my goal is to have 200,000 Instagram followers, you're going to get 200,000 Instagram followers, and that is not going to feel special. It's not going to make you happy. It's not going to change your life. It's not going to, all of a sudden make everything else in your life better, because you'll instantly want 400,000 and the next and the next and the next. And so he's kind of saying that the only way for us to be happy and the only way to be successful over a long period of time, over decades, is to get comfortable with struggle and to embrace struggle, because out of that, out of pain, out of failure, obviously comes learnings, and through learning we become better and better, and we increase the probability that the bets that we're making against the consensus are going to be right and are going to work out. So interesting book. That is two very small points in what has so far been a book of really interesting insights from someone much smarter and wealthier, but maybe not as chic as of me. So let's get into the questions here. Question number 1, how can I enhance my presence this holiday season? Holidays are tough. We did a survey for our clients around the holiday season, just trying to understand what influencers, how they think about it. 50% of influencers said they've turned down deals during the holidays because it was too late or because they had too many, sponsored posts already. So that's interesting because there is a huge amount of demand for sponsored posts. There is not as much supply. You're bombarded with, you're bombarded with marketing in general. A large portion of the marketing spend globally happens in Q4. A lot of retailers make 50% of their yearly money in the months of November and December. So it is massively important for every retailer in the world to be successful this holiday season. A retailer is planning holiday a year out. They're already probably planning the next holiday season. So, if you're just thinking about holiday now and what you're going to do to stand out, you're probably too late. You're probably not going to be able to, do something really impactful. I don't think that, I was talking to Grace Atwood recently, and she was talking about how she set a tree up in her house in October and decorated it so she would have all of her content ready to go. She kind of was very buttoned up, and she kind of had planned out her holiday season quite well. I think that traditional bloggers do a great job with this. They always are putting out the gift guides, that they kind of roll out over the course of a few weeks. It's very shopper helpful. So I think if you're a traditional blogger, you probably don't need my advice on holiday. Hopefully you are, putting together a solid gift guide. Hopefully you're providing that value to your readers who are coming to you for gifts and for gift ideas. Influencers who don't have a blog, who maybe aren't as product focused, it's an interesting time of year because every retailer, the only thing they care about right now is sales. There's no brand awareness campaigns happening right now. So there's only sales-driven campaigns. So I would encourage you on your sponsored posts to just remember that you are an advertiser. Remember that you are there to sell a product. Try and do a really good job of convincing people to spend their money on that product. We've talked about it before, but use the product. If a brand is asking you to try and become a spokesperson for that product, make sure you use it, make sure you research it. Research the history of the brand. Who started it? What made them special when they started the company? Sometimes if you go back for an older company, 50, 60 years, they have really fascinating founding stories. Maybe you can pull that into your post somehow. But remember that you are a salesperson for that brand and try and help them sell it. If you don't feel like you can sell the brand, the expectation is that you would walk away. Now, outside of sponsored posts, what can you do that's impactful? Especially early in the season. Now, when's this coming out? Today. So from now for the next week, people are going to be amped up to see holiday shit. They are ready to see lights. They're ready to see, red and green and you and fucking reindeer ears. They are ready for that content. Think about how excited you are to put Christmas music on the first time, and think about how much you hate it by the time Christmas rolls around. The posts that you put out are the same. Right now, I think there's an appetite for it. People want to see it. It makes them happy. It reminds them of the holidays. It gets them excited to go shopping and to drink hot cocoa and all that, wear onesie pajamas and all that. They're excited about it. They want to see it. They will not want to see it nearly as much in 3 weeks. So try and get your content out early. Sometimes being first is better than being best. So, earlier the better. And then again, let's go with our, if this episode is rooted in Dalio's advice, go against the consensus. Think about what everyone else is doing and try and do something different. If you don't feel like you can shoot a iconic holiday photo, or something that just is like screaming holiday that you think people are going to love, then think about what nobody else will do and try and do something there. Being personal is always good. There's, one of our first year we were in business, we sent out these gifts to clients, and we contacted the siblings of influencers and got them to write stories about that influencer when they were a kid during the holidays. And we got them to send us a photo of the kids like young in front of their trees, or celebrating the holidays in whatever way they did. It was really cute and heartfelt, because the stories around the holidays are sappy and heartfelt and sometimes tragic, and it's a good time for you, I think, to open up personally to your followers in a month where they will be bombarded with messages of buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this. It might be nice to just tell them a bit about yourself, tell them a bit about some holiday memories that you have. Nice time to kind of open up and be a little more personal if you have in the past shied away from doing that. End of the day, yes, this is an important time commercially for everyone in the industry, for everyone in advertising and retail as we are. Try not to stress too much about it. End of the day, this should be a time for you to be with your family. It should be a time for you to kind of look back on your year. Wouldn't stress too much about it. Everyone I've ever come in contact with that works in retail or advertising for retailers hates the holidays, because it becomes a negative thing because it's so stressful. It's not worth ruining the holidays so you can get like the perfect Instagram up. So don't sweat it too much. Remember next year, and maybe next year start thinking about it in August and planning it out so that you don't get too stressed. Question number 2. I was getting crazy reach on my posts a few weeks ago, above my follower counts, from people that don't follow. Lately, I haven't gotten any reach outside of the following, even though they're some of my best posts ever. How did it not make it to the Explore page? Seems contradictory to everything I know about the algorithm. So, quick explanation for those of you who aren't looking at your numbers as much. When you see your impressions, you see impressions from people that weren't following you. So you can see like impressions from Explore or other. So this influencer is saying they used to get a lot of impressions from Explore, now they're not. One, this is normal. The algorithm is tweaked and changed all the time. And if at some point you were benefiting from the algorithm and you were getting on the Explore page and you were getting a lot of followers and views because of that, I wouldn't beat yourself up too much when that goes away. I would be happy that you had it. Most people never have that moment where they're, getting more views than they have followers. It can be frustrating. The Explore page works fairly simply, as explained from our visit at Instagram the other day. Essentially, they say, if I follow you and you follow Tim, and I don't follow Tim, and you are very engaged with Tim's posts, they will put Tim on the Explore page assuming that I might be interested since you seem so interested. So it takes the accounts that somebody is very engaged with and serves them to their followers. This goes back to making sure you're driving engagement inside your feed, making sure people are commenting, making sure they're liking. That is driving everything. So if it fell off a cliff, I will say that like you are not the first person I've heard that from. It doesn't mean that you won't be back on the cliff in a couple months or a couple weeks. These algorithms are very complex and they change all the time, and Instagram grows all the time, and so it gets more and more competitive to get on that page and harder. Something that was talked about at Instagram as well. I'm not a big IGTV believer. I don't think anyone at Facebook and Instagram is touting IGTV as a big success right now. IGTV is on the Explore page now. They're serving IGTV videos on the Explore page. You know that Instagram pushes new features really hard. There is a fraction of the Instagram community is creating IGTV videos, so potential growth opportunity there. Again, I'm not a big believer in IGTV, but this is coming from Facebook saying that they are actively pushing IGTV videos on Explore, and there's just not much competition there. So that could be one way to get on there. But look, it's kind of a black box what the algorithm does. And again, I wouldn't sweat it too much. If you were getting a bunch of views and now you weren't, my suggestion would be to tweak something to keep trying things. The other thing is that like Instagram is in some ways it is a bit of a meritocracy, right? Like the platform is driven by the desires of that platform. And so, again, what worked 6 months ago probably won't work now because the world is different now than it was 6 months ago. So it might even be not that, anything changed at Instagram, but that tastes have changed in general, ever so subtly. And those tastes have moved away from what you are doing. And maybe your engagement fell organically on your feed by 10%. And maybe that 10%, which if you're getting 1,000 likes, it's only 100 likes. That's not a huge amount. It's not like a noticeable amount that you would freak out about, but maybe that 10% is keeping you off the Explore page. So tastes are changing all the time. You have to keep changing. You have to keep evolving. Evolution is absolutely the key to everything that you're doing. So if it's not working anymore, I wouldn't bang my fist on the table and ask, why isn't this working? This is so unfair. I would understand that things are different now. The world is different. And you now have to operate within those new parameters. It's probably not going to go back. So like that's done. Now what is the important question? Try new things, experiment, figure out what's going on, and track those results. Okay, question number 3. How can I improve my story engagement? My posts are doing well, my stories aren't. I've heard this a few times, both sides. Stories doing well, posts aren't. Posts doing well, stories aren't. It's interesting because we generally see stories and posts to be pretty tied. Like generally impressions-wise, if you get 100 impressions on your post, you get 25 impressions on your story. So you're getting 25% of the amount of impressions on your story as you do on your post. That's generally what we're seeing. So that is rare. First, I would ask, have your stories ever done well, or have they always underperformed? If they've always underperformed, I think it is proof that maybe what you're doing there isn't interesting to your audience for some reason. The algorithm is not predatory. It's not just screwing you over. So if they're not serving your stories to people, it's probably because people are skipping your stories. So again, my advice is not much different than it always is, which is test new things, track the data, take a week, write down your average story views that you're getting now, change things up the next week, and write your story views down then. Change things up again, write your story views. Plot that all out, track it, see if you can create change. You try very different things and see if you can get things to change. Linking what's happening in your post with what's happening in your stories is great. Rach Martino does a lot of this. She does a lot of she does this behind the gram thing. She'll explain, she'll post behind the scenes. She does a nice job. Mike Q, who we've talked about a bit, Q Mike on Instagram, he does a nice job of showing behind the scenes. Now, he does these complex pieces, like videos and things like that. And so he's showing behind the scenes of it. So it is interesting if you're interested in the post. And, it just goes back to that. Like, is it interesting, or is it you walking to the gym and being like, walking to the gym? I think that stories came out, everyone tried it, and it was just like, let's throw up whatever. And then it's gotten a little more professional. People are using the templates. They're trying to make it look a little better. They're shooting stuff specifically for stories. So I think the quality level on stories has gone up, but there still is not a huge amount of strategy. What are you saying? Do you have a weekly or daily theme that you are working around? Do you have little things that you always do? Again, if you look at like a Rach Martino, she does that like behind the gram. That's a consistent thing that she is doing over and over. A couple of my friends I follow don't have a big following, but like once a week they do like the inspo stuff. That is kind of nice and interesting if you have taste. So I think thinking about themes, thinking about buckets, thinking about trying to get your stories away from just I'm bored and I'm going to pick up the phone and film myself, to more thoughtful, produced work is one way to go. Again, the other way is that like there are people with big personalities. Christina Cardona from Trope Rouge is a great example. Her stories are, there is no thought going into that, but she's funny, and she's engaging and charming. And I think that like you just want to watch it because she's kind of ridiculous. So for her, a more produced story would actually be a detraction, because her whole vibe is kind of just like letting you into her life and her being like, oh my gosh, like I love Cheetos. So I think it just depends on what your vibe is. But as always, I would say experiment, track, try new things. There is a way to fix it if you work at it. So that is all, people. Tim has to edit this and turn it around in 2 or 3 hours, so I'm going to let him get to that. Cheers.